Coin Society talk number 6. We welcome Dr. Shailendra Bhandare once again. In the world of Indian numismatics, Dr. Shailendra Bhandare needs no introduction, but for the uninitiated few who are not, part of the Indian numismatic scene, so that's a small introduction to Dr. Shailendra Bhandare. His first degree was in pharmacy. He started his academic career in the UK with a stint at the British Museum. He is currently the senior assistant keeper at the Ashmolean Museum. He's a fellow at St. Cross College, University of Oxford. On a personal bit, he has gained the reputation of being the foremost scholar of our generation in Indian numismatics. He's a walkie-talkie encyclopedia on Indian history. Above all, he is accessible to one and all to answer their questions related to Indian numismatics. Also, I'm very excited to announce the third talk, which will be happening the following Friday. I'll just give you the title. The title is Finding a Foothold, the East India Company's Mint at Mumbai, 1665 to 1715 AD. So that's all from me. We welcome you, Shailin, to our talk, and the meeting is with you now.
Thank you. Thanks, Malcolm. I have been recording this, so I managed to record while the Steam screen is on, so it's all right. You can record it at your end as well, I guess. Great. So I'm going to put my video off now and just talk to the screen, as it were. I would expect, I would ask, please, everyone else also, please, the videos and sound off so that we know we don't have any problems with bandwidth. So this is the second talk in the proposed 4-talk series that I made a promise to for the Mumbai Coin Society. And in each of these talks, we're going to sort of look at different chronological areas, different utility areas of how Indian numismatics can be deployed, as it were, in the study of wider history. And today we're going to change our gaze towards the ancient period. And just a second, Malcolm, can you put your video off, please? Thank you. And we are going to talk about how particular numismatic methodologies help us to know the past and how they can be deployed in reconstructing the past. What is also quite interesting is that what we're going to see is that coins do play a very important role in connecting various parts of the Indian subcontinents, not just geographically, but also from a thematic and historical point of view. So coins from, say, Gandhara can, link to the coins from Deccan. The coins from Deccan can link to the coins from the Gangetic Valley, and so on and so forth. So it is these disparate areas that can be brought into the chronological web. That is what is the real advantage of looking at coins from this particular perspective. And one of the major utility tools, reconstructive tools that we have on hand is counterstruck coins that are known. A lot of people might not, everybody's familiar with the term counterstruck coins. Just a minute, how's this? When you talk about Indian history, there are two kinds of evidences that are usually put together. And the first evidence is textual evidence, and we're not going to talk about that at all here at this time. We're going to just focus on material evidence, because coins per se are part of the spectrum of material evidence that is used to construct particularly ancient Indian history. And there are sort of three aspects of material evidence here at our disposal: coins, inscriptions, and archaeological evidence. And these three components of material evidence usually talk to each other. Although we have scholars which specialize in different branches, and then, the typical story is that the scholars don't look into a parallel branch. So epigraphists are not really interested in looking at numismatics. Numismatists are not really, keen on learning about archaeological data. So these streams kind of sort of, move parallel to each other. However, when we are looking at reconstructing the past, it's very important to actually be interdisciplinary and actually see how these 2 or 3 aspects come together into helping us reconstructing history. When you actually come to coins, there are sort of intrinsic components that a coin itself carries within itself. Like, when you see a coin, it has certain features, it has certain metal, it has a certain weight. All these features which are inbuilt in the coin are the intrinsic methodologies that we can that to extract historical information out of coin. And as this chart shows, there are lots and lots of ways that a coin can be actually read or deconstructed. The major characteristic that a coin has is its type, and this is a typically numismatic terminology. And a type is, in its basic nutshell, is anything that a coin can show. And that is, how people sort of identify the coins with its sort of bold characteristics. So if a coin has an elephant on it, we say it's an elephant type coin, that way. The type is further sort of deconstructed into legend, the inscriptions on the coins, and the motifs, the kind of pictorial bearings of a coin. And whatever you see in red color in this chart are the techniques, are the components which are more useful than other components, sort of more in terms of when coins are used as historical evidence. And you can see in the technique of manufacture of a coin, there are 3 techniques that Indian coins are manufactured by. There is punching, die striking, and casting. And it is a technique of die striking that is particularly important to us here, because this is what is the predisposition to having counterstruck coins. So as many numismatists very well know, coins are sort of made by this kind of die striking process. And usually there is an anvil in which an obverse die is fixed. And then there is a punch on which a reverse die is engraved. And then you hammer the 2 together and you get a coin, which is in the middle of this, a flan is kept. So this is a kind of schematic diagram to just show the very basics of how a coin is manufactured by hand. The same principle applies to when coins are manufactured by machines. It's same principle: pressure, upper die, lower die, and that's how you get coins. So in this particular method of making coins, there is a certain deviation or certain kind of innovation that sometimes happens. And this is what is exactly counter-striking is. In its very basic way, it is a condition in which the coin is said to be in when a coin is described. So when a coin is cataloged, which is kind of one of the basic ways to understand coins, is to catalog and to classify them. So when a coin is actually seen and described, counter-striking, a counter-struck coin is something that a coin is in a condition of being counter-struck. And in a very simple terms, it's a coin made from another coin. So it's like one coin is used to make another coin. And there is a difference here in the terminology between restriking, double striking, and counter striking. And there's a little bit of, I'm going to spend a little time on dealing with these terminologies. And there's also a 4th term called counter marking. Instead of counter striking, there is also counter marking. So restriking usually involves the same coin type and the same issuing authority. And in later times, not in ancient times, but in later times, it can also mean a repeated striking, the kind of a striking which is done at a later date. So, when you're talking about British Indian coins, you can say that it's proof restrike. So it's a proof condition coin which is restruck, made from the same dies, but at a different time. So that is also a kind of restriking. But generally, restriking means that the same authority somehow sort of ends up using its earlier coins to sort of make new coins with. That is, when you say the coin is restruck, it is usually the same type and the same authority. Double striking is usually a mistake, and it results in dual impressions of the same motif. So the same type is struck twice, and it usually happens because it causes because of slippage of dies. Like, for example, when you're hammering a coin into its manufacture, because in ancient times the coins were not held in position by a collar to actually hold the blank exactly between the two dies. This is what sort of used to cause the coins to slip a bit, or indeed the hammer's blow is not exactly at the 90 degrees angle. It can be a slightly different angle from which the blow is received on the punch. So that means that the punch can slip, and it can create a sort of wavy or repeated impression. Counter-striking as against these two things is when there are usually two different issuing authorities involved. So, and it is an intentional use or intentional recycling of one authority's coins by the other. And it is also called sometimes overstriking, although it is slightly confusing because overstriking can mean just any strike which happens over a coin. And it's not exactly counter-striking. I mean, by counter-striking, I mean that there are two different authorities involved. What is quite interesting here is that due to this process, due to the fact that there are two types involved, there is a notion that there is an undertype and an overtype. And these are related to the chronological placement of these two authorities on the coin being different. So undertype is something which is the coin subjected to is in. So we can see in the next one, this is what is happening. As I said, this is another schematic diagram. There's a punch and there is an anvil and there is a blank or flan in the middle. However, when the coins are factured, that it is.
I can hear the sound, but video is not coming.
Sorry. If you have any technical difficulties, please try to solve them by yourself. It's a bit difficult for me because I'm not seeing my own screen at all. Or maybe you could send a text message to Malcolm or whatever, because usually these problems are because of bandwidth and the strength of the internet. So, just bear with other people so that, other people can also actually listen to this. So coming back to this slide, so in the usual manufacturing process, there is a blank which has no impression. It's a plain metallic piece. And in counter-striking process, this blank is then replaced by a coin and it is struck between new dies. And what is the outcome here is that the undertype features are partly obliterated because something else is struck on top of it. And the other outcome is that what is that? That something that is struck on top of it, the partial or full imprint of those features then occurs on these coins. Now, why do people do this? It's a very interesting thing. Why would people be doing this? The one advantage is that it actually eliminates the step in the coin manufacture of making a blank. Preparing a blank is also a step in manufacturing a coin, and that is completely eliminated because you have actually a blank which is already been made by somebody else, and then you can put that into manufacture. And it is pre-weighed and prefabricated, and so there is this kind of advantage, and the whole process is more labor intensive. It becomes more labor intensive in this particular manner. So that is the kind of practical reason why counter-striking is employed. So how do we use this as a tool for historical reconstruction? That is quite interesting. As I mentioned, a counter-struck coin is a single coin which has been struck twice. All right. So the undertype and the overtype are therefore linked in this coin in an immovable context. You can't really separate them because they have already been achieved. They have already been struck on this one particular coin. So the context in which these two undertypes and overtypes are locked is immovable. That is the first thing. Then there is a chronological relationship between this because a coin already struck coin is used to strike over. The undertype has to be early. It has primacy, and the overtype comes above it. So overtype comes later. That is what is something very insignificant. As a result, the authority that overtype belongs to can only supersede the authority that the undertype belongs to. So the overtype authority has to come over, as the name suggests, the undertype. And therefore, the overtype authority can exist only as a contemporary or a successor of the undertype authority, but never preceded. Now, this is a particular chronological context that counter-striking sets us for. So in other words, the overtype decides that the undertype is a terminus post quem. It can only come after the undertype has been made. This is what is, or during it when it was being made. And as I said at the beginning, this is a feature that allows us to link disparate areas of the subcontinent into a chronological web. And I'll come towards the end of the talk. I'll come to show you how this can be done. And what is so important about it is because there is concrete evidence. And this is something that has been done and dusted. It is palpable, it is tangible, it is material. So you can't really question it. It is something that has really happened in the past. So it is unquestionable. So there is a concrete evidence as far as relative chronological placement is concerned. So as I said, the fact that the overtype authority can only exist as a contemporary or a successor of the underlying undertype authority is a chronological fact, and it is being placed within the coin. And if these two authorities are actually mutually counter-striking each other's coins, then they can exist only as contemporaries. So this is a very important thing. And this gives us a very significant chronological hook, and it helps us in establishing a chronological relationship. Particularly when one of the authorities involved is dateable. So if you, by other parts of our other bits of evidence, if you know that one of the authorities, what date it is, then you can obviously date the other authority as something coming either, whatever, before or after, depending on whether it's undertype or overtype or whatever. It can happen at a political interface. So it's usually, when dynasties change, you find that the coins that are existing already in circulation are then sort of stamped over by the successor political authority as such. But however, it is not necessarily so. So there are, you can't really actually extrapolate this logic as a given conclusion that every time you see a counterstruck coin, there must be a political angle to that phenomenon. And that is mainly because the fact remains that this was actually mainly done, first of all, because it was labor intensive. Somebody actually had those blanks which were already fashioned, and it was sort of readily available as a raw material for making coins. It was used in that respect. So it had kind of a functional way of looking at things. And also the very important thing here is that the two currency systems that are involved have to be compatible, because to use that one particular coin as a new a coin issued by another authority, the currency system, underlying currency system, has to remain constant. It has to sort of not change in between. So then only this kind of counter striking is possible. So these are the reasons why not every time a political connection is envisaged. It can also happen because of a commercial or a trade related aspect that is involved here as well. So however, the fact remains that counterstruck coins give us a steady chronological anchor for dating the two authorities that are involved in it. And here are examples of certain coins which are counterstruck, and I chose to show you some Gandharan coins because in Gandhara they have really made a huge amount of difference to make us understand how the relative chronologies of issuing rulers can be arrived at. So we know that there are more than nearly about 30 Indo-Greek rulers, and some of them we have absolutely no evidence apart from the fact that they issued some coins. There is absolutely no evidence of any other evidence of their existence as such. And to know what were the kind of internal chronology of the group within this wide body of Gandharan Indo-Greek kings, the counterstruck coins have been very significant. And it's not just Indo-Greeks, but also later on. For example, the lower coin here is of a late Indo-Parthian ruler called Pacorus, and it has been counterstruck on a coin of the Kushan ruler Vimataktu or Sotromagus. So we can conclusively say that Pacorus was either contemporary with Sotromagus or he succeeded it, and therefore he must have existed somewhere around 180. So this is the kind of conclusions that we can reach. The two examples on the top are classic. I mean, Amintas over Epander. There is absolutely, again, no evidence apart from the coins for both these rulers. So we know nothing about Amintas or Epander apart from those coins. And these are the kind of counter strikes that actually help us to relatively position them. And there's a whole set of counter-struck Indo-Greek coins, which has been discussed by many scholars, including Bob Senior, who then subsequently arrange these in some sort of chronological, internal chronological order, depending on the counter strikes. And these are in here. You can clearly see the examples of how a counter struck coin looks. For example, it's quite evident that on this particular coin, top right, Helioclis, which is overstruck over a joint issue of Strato and Agathoclea. You can see that this is the bust of Helioclis, which is the overtype, but the undertype is the traces of the undertype are seen here. And this is the helmet, the part of the helmet of Athena, which is the undertype feature, which is seen on the coin of Strato and Agathoclea. Similarly, on the coin of Pachoris, you can see that there are these two lines here. You can see where my cursor is moving. And those are actually the ties of the diadem that the horse riding king on the reverse of Sotomagus coins is usually sports. So these are the kind of features that one can make out. It's not always possible to make these features out, but by stroke of luck, we have many coins which actually show these features very clearly, and therefore you can actually discern what is happening. Few more examples of counterstruck coins, and this is exactly how the internal chronologies can be arranged. For example, we know here that the top two coins are both issued by Strato the First. The coin on the left top is counterstruck over Menander, and the coin on top right is counterstruck over Lysias. So we can safely presume that Strato the First might have come as a successor or a contemporary of these two rulers. I mean, because he's counter-striking the coins of these two rulers as an overtype. Similarly, and the third one here is Helioclis the second, which is bottom left coin, is struck over Strato, the coins on the king who issued the top coins, and on the bottom right there is it's a counter-struck coin of Helioclis the second over Hermaios. So here again, because we know that Helioclis is striking coins of Strato, he must come after Strato, and therefore after all these kings like Hermaios, Lysias, or Menander. So this is a kind of indication that we get because of the study of counterstruck coins. That is, a typically numismatic proposition. But what happens when counterstruck coins are seen with a view of wider historical narrative? So this is just a small example of how counterstruck coins then help us to change the established historical narrative. Are these two coins, again from Gandhara. And we know that there are these kind of uninscribed symbolic coins which were known from Taxila. And the kind of interpretation that was given by early numismatists was these were kind of Indian coins. They don't have inscriptions. They are not realistic. They have these symbolic features. So therefore they must be Indian, and therefore they must have been struck before the Greeks arrived into this area. And in fact, there is, if you see the left coin here, the elephant and the lion particularly is also seen on coins of very early Indo-Greek rulers called Agathocles and Pantaleon. And the kind of numismatic series that was being proposed is that these coins were, these lion types, local Taxilan Indian coins were earlier than the coins of Agathocles, and Agathocles then subsequently copies these designs and then starts issuing his own coins which also have inscriptions on them. So this was the kind of understanding that was achieved. If anybody goes to show the to read the excavation reports at Taxila and how the chronology of the site of Taxila has been arranged, this is what you will see. And as a result of that, there was in the wider historical narrative, there was a story of Taxila being an independent entity for a little while. So the Mauryan Empire sort of breaks down around 230 BC, and Agathocles comes into picture at about 185 BC. What is happening between these two periods is that Taxila is somehow independent. And therefore, these coins were then sort of put in that time bracket, and everything was considered pre-Greek. Now we know these two coins, which are actually counterstruck on Indo-Greek coins, and therefore we can safely surmise, safely infer that the striking of these so-called Indian coins carried on during the Indo-Greek times. So this coin, the top coin, is the left coin is struck over a coin of Apollodoros II, and so is the right coin, and that means that they were very much in circulation, or they were very much being issued until about 160 BC, if not 185. So this whole narrative about Taxila being an independent state somehow is kind of deconstructed if by the evidence of these counterstruck coins. So this is where exactly the importance of counterstruck coins comes, that they not only help us understand internal chronologies of certain sets of rulers, but they also help us re-examine and maybe overturn established historical narratives. So it's mainstream historical stories that can be sort of re-scrutinized by presenting this kind of evidence, which is absolutely concrete evidence. This is undisputable evidence in that respect. When it comes to sort of mainland India and the kind of questions that these counterstruck coins can answer, is good example is served by the Satavahana dynasty. And the Satavahanas were preeminent dynasty in the Deccan.
Anytime.
There are lots of questions here about where did it originate, who was its progenitor, who was the earliest king, when did the Satavahanas begin to rule, how long did it last. These are the sort of basic questions. I mean, anyone can see that these are very, very basic historical questions that one can ask about these dynasties. And of course, people have scanned through different sets of evidence, and they have sort of prepared a kind of, they've tried to answer these questions. But this is the sort of absolute skeletal level history that one can think about. So the interpretations of the evidences, as the questions that have been asked, this is another chart that shows what exactly was going on. So as far as chronology is concerned, there are two views. The Satavahanas have a short chronology and a long chronology. The origin of the Satavahanas is said to be in Andhra Pradesh or Maharashtra or Karnataka. And the earliest ruler is supposed to be either somebody called Simuka or Chimuka, or a king whose name was Satavahana itself. Then the theory is that the Gupta dynasty was started by somebody called Sri Gupta, and it sort of gave its name to the Guptas. So something similar must have happened about the Satavahanas. There was a king called Satavahana, and then he gave his name to the dynasty, and then that's how it started. And there are various, I won't go into the details of mentioning the names, but you can see on the screen that there are various scholars who actually propound or back these various theories in their writing. There are certain schools, and some of these schools have been at loggerheads with each other for a long time. So these are the kind of historical debates that one can. There are these problems. What happens when the evidence that these scholars actually provide, what happens when the evidence does not match with what you have on hand? So there are these kind of incongruences. So there are two kinds of incongruence that appears as problems. So the emphasis that most of these scholars have placed is on textual evidence. So there is internal incongruence in the textual evidence. So for example, the texts which are like Puranas do not mention everything, So for example, number of kings, let's say. The Matsya Puran mentions 19 and describes 30 kings. Vayu Puran mentions 30 but describes 17. Bhagavad Puran mentions 30 but describes only 23. So there is this kind of jumble. Then there are variants within the Puranic manuscripts themselves. So for example, we know that from other evidences like inscriptions and coins that there was a king in the Satavahana dynasty whose name was Pulumavi. And if you actually go back to the Puranas, then we have several versions of these names coming up. So you have, sometimes his name is mentioned as Patumavi, sometimes he's mentioned as Shadramavi. There is something called Andaman, there is something called Rachaman, there is something called Salomadhi. So all sorts of variations. Same thing happens with Chimuka, the original, the supposed originator of the dynasty. His name comes in different Shimuka, Sirimuka, Chimuka, Shipraka, Sindhuka, all sorts of variations. So these are the kind of problems that one faces. And externally, between the textual evidence and the other aspects of evidence, such as coins and inscriptions, there are other problems. So for example, names known from coins do not match with the names that are in the text many times. And also, names known from inscriptions and dynastic order also do not match with what is indicated in the text. So how do we solve these kind of quandaries? And in this sort of historical problems, the counterstruck coins are of very, very important use for us. I'll show you how in a second. So for example, we say, of coins of a king whose names does not occur in any of the textual sources. And one of the examples is this king called Kochiputa Siri Satakani. His name does not appear in any of the Puranas. So he's not known from any textual or epigraphic sources. We don't know any inscription that has been left. As a king, his coins were first reported only in 1978. So it's a very, relatively a very recent, in last 50 years kind of discovery. And over the last 30, 40 years, as with the interest in collecting Satavahana coins growing, we know that he has struck coins in these kind of regional types of Junar, Nasik, Nevasa, and Prakasha. And it appears from the occurrence of his coins that his rule was more or less limited to the western parts of the Satavahana Empire. And it was quite interesting that his coins were actually reported from excavations in archaeology, from the excavations carried out at Nevasa in 1956. And you have stratigraphic evidence for coins of Kochiputa, but in 1956, nobody identified him as Kochiputa. So he was misidentified. That's where the report actually fails, that to understand that these coins are actually of Kochiputa, they attributed them to something called Satakarni II. So that entire important existence of a new king was completely lost at the time of when the excavation reports was published. These are some examples of coins of Kochiputa Siri Satakani. On top left, it's the elephant type coin from Nasik. Top right is an elephant type coin from Nevasa. Bottom left is a bull type from Nevasa, and bottom right is a lion type coin from Junar. So, and you can see that the lion type coin here is very different than the usual lion type coins of Junar that we see, and we shall see how it differs in later on in the presentation. What is so? How do we know how to place this chap? Where does he actually occur in terms of dynastic placement? And you can see that there were certain coins of this bull type from Nevasa, which obviously clearly indicate that they have been counterstruck. You can see that these are 3 examples that I've shown. You can see that there is something peeping out here in the top left coin here from the bull's body. There you can see something that is there. Similarly, on the back where there is a tree in railing, you can see that there is something here, almost looks like a cross. It's like there. Similarly, here you can see that the bull's body has parts of what is called a 6-armed symbol. So this is very clearly seen here. And similarly here as well, you can see that there is a staff on the lower coin through the bull's body, and on the reverse there are bits and bobs that are visible through. So it's a clear indication that these are counterstruck coins. And as the top left coin shows, the name of the king is very clearly written on it, and it says Rayo Kochiputa. So what is happening here? Who on what particular coin are these coins being counterstruck? So this is what is extremely interesting. And we see that these coins are struck upon a large body, a large series of uninscribed coins, which are known from Malwa and Gujarat. So It is this sort of coin, the 6-armed symbol, a single staff, the standing human figure, and this on the reverse, it also either has a frog or it has a swastika. So this is what you're seeing. And here's an enlarged picture of the same coin that I showed in the past slide. You can see very clearly that on the body of the bull that there is a triangulated standard, which is this triangulated standard on this coin, which is kind of peeping, making his head out. Similarly, on the reverse, you can make out that these are the arms of the swastika. Now, it's all right. I mean, we know that this is what is happening. So actually, the undertypes are known. However, it doesn't help us very much because the undertypes are uninscribed and we cannot chronologically place them. So even though the fact of the matter remains that this is a counterstruck coin, we really cannot get any historical information out of this, any chronological placement out of this, because as I said at the beginning, one of these coins, one of these types has to be dateable to actually arrive at some sort of interesting historical conclusion about it. And here we don't have, these coins are, none of these coins are dateable as of now. However, more counterstruck coins help us to deal with this problem. And we find this one single coin that is existing now in the British Museum can be an answer to these questions. So this is the coin, this is the undertype of the Kochiputta coin. This is the type on which Kochiputta is striking the coins. But this particular coin shows that it is a coin struck on a coin of Apollodoros II. And Apollodoros II coins are dateable. They are not conclusively dateable, but they are more or less dateable. So Apollodoros II has been dated to about 80 to 60 BC, and there is pretty much agreement about this date. I mean, you're not talking here about exact dating, precise dating, like, it can't be 83 BC or 85 BC or whatever, but roughly we know that he existed between 80 and 60 BC. So as the uninscribed Gujarat Malwa type coins are counterstruck on the coins of Apollodoros, we can surmise that they cannot exist before 80 BC, at least, somewhere like that. So that gives us a terminus postquem. They can only exist after or during the reign of Apollodoros II. So this is what is happening. So the overtype is on the left and the undertype is on the right. And you can see that this is what gives us a kind of dating of middle to late 1st century BC for these uninscribed coins from Gujarat and Malwa, because they have been counterstruck upon the coins of Apollodoros II. So this is a very interesting thing. So what does it tell us about the Kochiputta? So the coins of Kochiputta are kind of related to the coins of Apollodoros II in a way through the series of these counterstrikes. Now what does it tell us? It tells us that Kochiputta Siri Satakarni could not have existed before the Ujjain series, because he is striking the coins, his own coins, over the so-called Ujjain Malwa Gujarat series. That particular series could not have existed before Apollodoros II because it has been struck over the coins of Apollodoros II. So therefore, Kochiputta Siri Satakarni and Apollodoros are kind of linked. The former could not have existed before the latter, and therefore Kochiputta Satakarni could have existed only after 80 to 60 BC. So this is a chronological marker that we have an established marker for. So it has interesting implications, because once you have a kind of conclusive chronological marker like that, then on the basis of this marker and also other markers, you can construct a chronological skeleton. You can actually create a frame on which you can move the data and you can kind of make out what exactly was going on. So the implications of this are quite interesting, important as well, because this is the first time that we have some sort of conclusive dating for the trenches, the stratigraphy of Nevasa excavations. And whatever was said in the Nevasa excavation report now has to be reanalyzed with this particular chronological marker in mind. As I said, you can sort of move the coins and move the rulers around. We know, I'm not going into details over this because this is a topic of another lecture, that sort of the predecessors and successors of Kochiputta Satakarni, we know that Siri Satakani precedes him and Kosikiputta Siri Satakani succeeds him. So this is the kind of chronological implications that we get. And this is also becomes then a very important and indirect marker for early Satavahana chronology, and also for dates of other people like Kharavela, Suryamitra, Bhasatimitra, all these other kings, because they themselves are linked to each other in different sets of evidences. So for example, we know that the inscription of Kharavela in Kalinga, in Orissa, mentions Bhasatimitra. And it mentions Satakani. So we know that Satakani and Bhasatimitra were already sort of mentioned in the same sentence, same spate of time by Kharavela. So they have already been judged to be contemporaries, and the placement of one of them then therefore decides the placement of the other ruler as well. So this becomes very significant discovery. The other discovery that it helps us is to retest, to reassess the theory of this king Satavahana, somebody called Satavahana being the progenitor. And here we are helped by another counterstruck coin, and this is another counterstruck coin which has the inscriptions very clearly. Siri Satavahanasa, Vahanasa is very clearly seen. And on the reverse, there is a three-arched hill with a river below. And as you can see very clearly, that this coin is actually counterstruck on the same Gujarat Malwa Ujjain series of six-arm symbol, human figure, and swastika on the reverse. And as a result, this particular coin must have been therefore struck only after ATBC, not only after ATBC, but because Kochiputta Siri Satakarni is also using the same series as undertype to strike his own coins. We can say that the coin with the inscription Siri Satavahanasa must also be struck sort of contemporarily to Kochiputta at some point. So therefore, we see that very clearly that every time you have the inscription Siri Satavahana, it does not refer to a dynastic progenitor. And this also then helps us understand that the coins are actually Satakarni and Satavahana are used synonymously over a wide range of time. One set of coins is issued with a personal name, and the other set of coins is issued as with a dynastic name. So that's the only difference in them. But there is no sort of internal, that doesn't mean that the coins with the name Satavahana are necessarily of an originator whose name was Satavahana. So this is another very clear indication that gives us through counter-striking. These are some other interesting Satavahana counter-struck coins. The coin on top was first published by Ajay Shastri, and it is a coin which is struck by Satakarni over a coin of Suryamitra, who was a local ruler in Vidarbha. And you can clearly see that this is the elephant of the Satavahana coin. The legend Ranyo Siri Satakanisa is here, but here you can clearly see the traces of Ranyo Suyamitasa also. And here is the face of the deity, the man standing holding a standard that one sees on the coins of Suyamitra. So it's definitely a coin of Suyamitra which has been overstruck upon by Satakarni. And this is very interesting because, as I mentioned in the inscription of Kharavela at Udayagiri, he mentions that his armies marched to the west without even thinking of Satakarni. These are the exact words that he uses. So it establishes very clearly that by the time Kharavela was ruling, Satakarni had already established his rule in Vidarbha, and Vidarbha being to the west of Orissa, as you can imagine the political map. But then also we have other interesting counterstruck coins. This is Satakarni over another ruler from the same region, that is Dharmabhadra. And this actually tells us that both Suryamitra and Dharmabhadra might have existed before Satakarni's rule was established in this region. However, there is new evidence available to suggest that the conquest of the Vidarbha region by Satavahanas under Satakarni was not a sort of unidirectional feature. He was also contested. His power, his hegemony was also contested, and we see that this lower coin here is actually a local ruler called Patala Tolata, and this is actually counterstruck on a Satakarni coin. So we see that there's evidence of some sort of political struggle going on. Satakarni is counter-striking local rulers' coins, but local rulers are also counter-striking his coins. So there is some, some sort of political tussle going on here at this time. The other significant use that counter-striking gives us is to establish an internal or type chronology. So this is again a very significant aspect of studying numismatics. You have several types which are issued with the same inscription, and you don't know which came first and which came later. So for example, we have lots of Satavahana coins with the name Siri Satakarni. We don't know which Siri Satakarni it is. If it is the ruler named Satakarni, then he had a long reign, and we don't know which coins came first and which coins came later. But it is quite interesting that when he strikes coins jointly with his co-ruler, Queen Naganika, many of these coins are actually counterstruck on earlier coin types. So for example, the square coin type coin Naganika that you see here on the top is actually counterstruck on a Nasik type elephant coin, which you see here on the right. And you can see that this is the elephant and his trunk and the swastika, and the remnants of these two are seen on the coins of Naganika here. This is the elephant and the trunk, and the swastika is just right here where I'm moving my cursor. Similarly, his coins from Junner are also counterstruck here. The lower coin is seen. There is a seated lion here. You can see its back, the contours of the outline of its back, and the tail of the lion here. And this is the undertype. This is where the lion is seated as if a cat is sitting on its rear, and there is a kind of a tail that goes on there. So both these coins of Naganika are struck upon the coins of Satakarni, and this gives us a kind of an idea of the internal chronology of these two types. So quite significant use for knowing the through counter-striking. Very significantly here, we have a coin of this famous, the more familiar Junnar lion type, which is now counterstruck on a Naganika coin. You can see that this is the example of a Junnar lion, and here you can see that it is very clearly the undertype of Sri Naganika is visible here. And this shows us that it was this particular type must have been introduced during or after these Naganika coins were circulated. So this gives us a very nice internal chronological thing, insight into how these types were. These coins are absolutely, many of these are unique and rare coins, and they have been crucial in terms of making us understand our historical background. The other significant usage that happens for Satavahanas is, of course, to outline Kshaharata and Satavahana conflict. And here you have two examples of two Satavahana kings counter-striking coins of Nahapana. The one on top is Gautamiputra Siva Satakarni, which is counter-struck over Nahapana, and more famously Gautamiputra Sri Satakarni over Nahapana. But this was not a unidirectional counter-striking. Nahapana was also counter-striking the coins of Satavahana. So the lower coin is a Satavahana Nevasa elephant type coin, which has been counter-struck with the devices of Nahapana, the thunderbolt and arrow here. So that actually tells us that all these three kings were existing contemporarily, because Siva Satakarni and Siri Satakarni were both contemporary with Nahapana in this respect. So when it comes to assigning the dates of Nahapana himself, there are again counterstruck coins which come to our help, because these three coins are, one of them is in the British Museum, and two were actually reported from excavations in Taxila. And these are Indo-Parthian coins, late Indo-Parthian coins, and they have been sort of involved in sort of counter-striking. So the top coin here, the yellow lines, the yellow arrows just point out to the remnants of the undertype that you can see here. So the top coin is Nahapana counterstruck over Sasis. The lower coin is Sasis counterstruck over Nahapana. That can mean that both Sasis and Nahapana were sort of contemporaries. And since the rule of Sasis is more or less certain to be 20 and 46 AD, we can therefore date Nahapana around the same time. And the last coin here is a Nahapana counterstruck over a coin of Satavastris, who was a successor sources. So these, again, coins coming from completely different regions, coins coming from Sindh, issued in Gujarat, found in Taxila. This is the kind of thing that I was talking about. This actually helps us knowing the chronological web through different parts of the Indian subcontinent. So very significant evidences to the effect. So to come to an end, I just sort of I'll say a little bit more about what this weaving the chronological web consists of. So most of ancient Indian chronology is constructed around markers, and they come from a varied evidential basis. So the markers are drawn from disparate sets of evidences. Some of the markers are, epigraphic, some of them are coin related, some of them are text related, so there are these kind of various markers, and depending on these markers, we can construct the skeleton of ancient Indian chronology. Some of the markers are very well known. So for example, we know that Alexander's date when he came to India is about 325 BC-ish, roughly. We know that Ashoka must have existed around 270 BC because he mentions 4 other Greek kings in his inscriptions. Then these kind of different evidences come from different aspects, such as some are traditions, some are inscriptions, some are texts, some are coins. The fact that the Vikrama Samvat era begins in 58 BC is part of our tradition. So that is something that tells us that this is a chronological marker. When texts such as a very important Sanskrit text about astrology was studied by Professor Harry Falk, and that particular text is called the Yavana Jataka and it is written by an astronomer called Spuji Dvaja. And by decoding particular correlationships that were given in this particular text, Sanskrit text, Professor Falk was able to demonstrate very convincingly that the date of Kanishka was AD 127. And once that particular date is then established and accepted, then you have another chronological marker. We just saw on the basis of counterstruck coins of Indo-Parthians that Nahapana can be dated to around 30 to 80 AD. So these are the kind of markers that one gets. So one has to sort of then work around this evidence and then also relate these chronological markers to other evidences which describe contemporaneity between various kings. So for example, we know that Kharavela's inscription mentions somebody called Bahasatimita, who was a king of Koshambi. So Kharavela and Bahasatimita are sort of linked in a contemporaneous context. Ptolemy's geography, other hand, mentions two people, Ptolemaios and Theasthenes, which are definitely known to the Indian audience as Pulumavi and Chashtana, but then we know that they existed around the same time. So the chronological markers that the coins and other evidences help us to establish then are compared with these kind of other pegs or other pointers that other parts of evidence are given to us. And then, we see that we can date Kochiputta Satakarni, who is dated through coins connecting Gandhara and Malwa in Gujarat. So this is quite significant that one part of disparate parts of the Indian subcontinent is then sort of gets connected chronologically through the other part of the subcontinent. The date of Kanishka then has helped us to date coins of several antecedents, such as the Scythian Kshatraps Mujatriya and Rajuhula, but also the Gujarati Kshatrap Damazada I, who was the younger brother of Chashtana. And because he is known to have counterstruck coins of Sotomagus, who was then a predecessor of Kanishka. So this is how we can get together all this particular way. And each of these stories have a numismatic component. So for example, whatever you do with connecting these dots, coins sort of feed in and help us to achieve concrete stories, more or less, in a very certain manner. So this is something very significant, and as numismatists, we should be quite proud of ourselves by providing evidence which is kind of concrete and unchallengeable in a set of evidences which are widely debated. So not just small disagreements, but large disagreements. And then sometimes you get these coins which actually completely solve the question by presenting something which is, a very, very concrete and tangible evidence, which is not easily challenged. And a lot of these evidence is therefore presented through counterstruck coins, and therefore counterstruck coins are a very, very, very significant tool in our hands to describe and to understand ancient Indian chronology. So this is where I stop. I'm going to stop the share. Then we'll look at the questions and chats, and I'm very happy to answer those when we get to them. So thanks a lot, and I shall see you all next Friday when we will discuss and know more about the early activities of the East India Company at Bombay, at the Mumbai or Bombay Mint, as it were. So thanks everybody so much, and I hope you are all safe and well and enjoying life, and keep being positive about it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shailendra.
Okay, thanks. I can come back to my video. There we go. Start video. There we go.
Yep. So thank you, very informative. We have a few questions already in the chat box. If anybody has a question, please feel free to type it into the chat box, and we'll take one at a time. I think the question is from Bhushan Kapadia. There are certain counter-striking of words like Raij, Falus found in coins of Indo-Parthian and late Kushan coins. Is there any study done on these? Are these legit countermarks?
Yes, they are legit countermarks. And what what we did not particularly see is in the utility of counterstruck coins. The utility is that, when we want to use counterstruck coins as historical evidence, the counterstriking, it should happen at around the same time, as it were. So there are examples where counterstriking does happen in coins which are centuries apart. When there is one coin in British Museum, which is 18th century Afghan coin, which has been counterstruck upon a coin of Gondophares. So this is like 2000 years in between. And in that case, it does not really tell us anything more. Like, it doesn't, of course, we know that Gondophares existed before Ahmad Shah Durrani. That's not something that is going to add significantly to our historical knowledge. That is something that it's an established fact. So in these cases, these kind of coins should be seen as novelties. They're not really useful as historical tools. So yes, to answer your question, they are legit countermarks. So what happened was these coins were being found everywhere in Afghanistan. And of course, if by chance any of these actually fitted in the currency system that was being used, they would be just stamped, and then they would just circulate those coins. So that is very much the case. I mean, they are interesting phenomenon in terms of understanding the utility, the endurance of certain coins in circulation, but not so much to draw chronological conclusions.
Okay. The next question is from Ganesh Nene. Are Satwan coins counterstruck or overstruck on Iran?
Some of them are. There are some which are counterstruck, and there are some which are countermarked as well. So there is definitely a kind of understanding of, there's some evidence to the effect that there was, when the Satavahanas sort of entered that particular territory, they supplanted a local ruling dynasty, and then subsequently some of those coins were counterstruck.
Okay. The next question is, are there any counterstruck coins of Greek tetradrachms?
There are some coins of counterstruck coins of Greek tetradrachms. Again, as I said, this is not something which is happening because, as I said at the very beginning, most of these coins are actually being used as a kind of, so are there any counterstruck coins of Greek tetradrachmas? Yes, they are. That's the quickest answer that I can give for that. And then I see there is Prashant's question. If A is counterstruck by B, we only know that A existed before B. But how much earlier we don't know. So isn't it wrong saying that A and B are contemporary? I never said that A and B are contemporary. There is a chance that A and B can be contemporary. So that is which is very important. So for the particular instance of Satvahana counterstriking Suryamitra and Damabhadra, how do you place Damabhadra and Suryamitra, who was earlier and who was later? This particular counterstrike does not give us any evidence to that effect. So we only know that Suryamitra and Damabhadra both existed before Satakarni or contemporarily with Satakarni. So it's the question where the question that we want answered is given by the
Yeah.
So,
yeah, go ahead,
so
Shailendra.
do you understand? Did you get my answer basically?
Yeah, I understood.
I mean, basically, the questions you are trying to answer are not within the remit of the evidence. That is the thing. So we can certainly say from the evidence that Suryamitra and Damabhadra are before Satakarni. That particular evidence does not tell us anything about the relative chronology between Damabhadra, Dharma, and Suryamitra.
Yeah.
All right.
And how about the other tiny counter marks, the swastika and?
Well, that is something that is that one has
what
to.
do they make out of them?
No, that one has to sort of study. I mean, from where I see them, they are more or less as revalidations. So they are an attempt to actually reintroduce older coins into circulation at a later date. So whether they have any historical significance or not, again, the evidence is not that clear.
Do you? Yeah, I have heard you saying this before for other coins also. So where from you got this? I mean, what is the? Do you have any trace of evidence for this, or it's just a feeling?
The trace of evidence is the fact that some of these coins, the earlier coins, the main reason is that a lot of these coins are kind of worn, and they appear to be where people are making currency available at a different rate, and some of it is some of the evidence that we have is also from the kind of later. So the fact that later on in 18th, 19th, 20th century there was this practice of revalidating earlier coins when the exchange rates were changing. We can sort of extrapolate that kind of evidence and say perhaps this is what is happening at this time. Of course, I mean, are uninscribed. They don't have any inscription. So my explanation is not a conclusion. It's at best it can be called an educated guess, of course. And again, here we don't have much.
Okay, there's a next question. Tripuri local rulers' coins are known to by the Satvana rulers like Sri Sati as well as Sri Satkarni. These are
Right.
few Iran Vidusha rulers' coins that also counterstruck by few Satvana rulers.
So yes, so that's fine. That's not a question, that's a comment.
Okay, thanks. I think there is one more from Mr. Prashant Kulkarni. What is your understanding of countermark Satvana coins? What does the swastika and Srivasta?
Well, this is what he was, I think, trying to ask, as part of his last question. These are the small symbols that are then countermarked, and I think this is some sort of validation of older coins.
There's another question by Ganesh Nene. What is the difference between countermark and counterstruck? Countermark vis-a-vis seen on Janjira.
So countermark is usually the term used for smaller symbols which are usually struck only on one side. So counterstrike is a full die, and it's usually occupies the entire die of the undertype. Whereas countermark is a mark, it's not a full die.
There's another question by Vedihaka. It is known that Shivaji found a hoard of gold coins in Daulatabad fort, which he used to finance his other expeditions. Were they melted and used, or they were counterstruck? Are there any evidences of such usage?
No, there are no such uses known for Shivaji, but there are coins of Aurangzeb which were counterstruck by the British at Bombay.
Okay.
Yeah, and we shall see that next time.
Sorry, there's one private question as well. Are there coins of Rashtrakuta counterstruck known in Abbasid coins, as Abbasid coins are found in Western India? Also not sure if Rashtrakuta coins were influenced by their designs.
No, I mean, they certainly were influenced by the designs. I've already given a big talk about that later on. So Abbasid coins were not counterstruck, mainly because the Satvahana, the Rashtrakuta currency system and the Abbasi currency system were very different. So what we have actually is Abbasid coins cut to smaller fractions, which are Rashtrakuta weight denominations. So we do get that, but it's not, you don't get, there are no direct counterstrikes available.
There's another question by him. There is one coin where Huvishka overstruck on Vima Takto Sotermegas. What is the context?
Well, it just means that Sotermegas came before Huvishka, and that we know already. So that's not much of a context there. One has to this is going on. The counter striking is a functional thing as well. It's not something that people are doing for. I mean, Jahangir counter strikes Sher Shah Suri's coins because Sher Shah Suri's coins were kind of demonetized and then they were available to be used as they were being discounted, so they were available to be used as current coins. So if you are buying coins from the market in a discounted price and then you are actually reissuing them at full price, then you are making money on it.
Okay.
So there is a certain amount of functionality aspect also in counter striking coins.
Okay. So there are a few. It's by Amit Udeshi. So there are a few Kushan coins known to exist that are overstruck by the Yodha rulers as well. So can we conclude them to be?
I'm not aware of any such coins which are Kushan coins struck on Yodhas.
Okay.
Sir, I don't understand.
Anyway.
Okay, then another question from Amit Udeshi. Sir, I'd like to know which Tripuri local ruler coins are known to exist and overstruck by the Satvana rulers like Sri Swati.
There are no Tripuri local coins which are counterstruck. There are Vidisha coins which are counterstruck.
Amit Surana asks, what about BI PM struck coins?
They are counter-marked coins. They are not counter-struck coins. And PM was counter-marked in Mozambique.
Okay. I think the last question here
stop here because there are, the questions will just carry on otherwise. So,
I don't know.
Yeah. And,
okay.
So anyway, thanks a lot. I shall see you next Friday. And Malcolm, just issue a password notification.
Sure, I'll do that.
Yeah, it was very nice, Shailendra.